8.1.
Go to any high street and you'll see people wearing everything from the cheapest lycra tops to the most expensive fabrics. But this year, you're 17.8% less likely to see fashionable clothing than last year. That's according to a new survey published this week. And with me is the woman who did the research, Judy Hubbard. Judy, you say we're now 17.8% less fashionable. How did you come to such a precise figure?
Well, it sounds odd, but it is the result of information collected from photos we took with our own cameras, photos posted on social networking sites, interviews in the streets, and articles we got from magazines.
Okay, and when did this research begin?
We started to collect data from our readers 2 years ago, following a debate on the letters page of Looks magazine. We wanted to know whether or not there really was a general trend away from what might be described as fashionable clothing towards cheaper, less attractive designs.
And what did your readers think?
Well, although our readers all stated that they were careful to keep up with fashion, most thought that other people cared much less about fashion 2 years ago than they did just a few years earlier. They were either earning less, saving more, or simply spending their money on things other than clothes.
I see. So you started checking the data to see whether the views expressed by your readers were correct.
That's right. Last year, using all the information available to us, we tried to get an accurate picture about how fashionable Britain was 2 years ago.
And how fashionable were we back then?
On a scale of 100, we stood at about 23.
23? That doesn't sound very good.
Actually, it's rather better than we were expecting.
And how does that compare to other European countries?
Unfortunately, we don't have any data for Europe. But the US edition of Looks carried out similar research, and America was slightly ahead of us with a score of 27.
Right. Still not that great. How do things stand now?
Well, as you pointed out earlier, we were 17.8% less fashionable last year than 2 years ago. But the US was about 2% more fashionable.
So, a small increase for the US, but a rather dramatic fall for us. Why?
It's difficult to say, but there do seem to be a number of factors. The main one being lifestyle choices.
Lifestyle choices. What do you mean by that?
Well, while it is true that most people have less money to spend, that doesn't really account for the general trend away from fashionable clothing.
Right. So how do you account for the decline?
Well, it seems that people are getting fatter in the UK. In the 1980s and 90s, many British people were happy to disguise their size by wearing fashionable sportswear.
So why are things different?
Basically, we've got so big that it's now very difficult to find nice clothes that fit us. Many people think there's no point going to any of the better clothes stores because there's nothing for them to buy. And fashion companies don't want to make clothes for very fat people.
Because it's not great for their image.
That's right. They're now focusing more on the kinds of things you might see in music videos. So there's a definite gap in the market, and no one seems to have stepped in. And as a result, it's getting more difficult for the larger person to dress with confidence. And unfortunately, the general trend is towards a fatter, less fashionable Britain.
And what are your predictions for next year?
Well, I don't think people are going to get thinner, unfortunately. I don't know the future, but perhaps Britain will become more unfashionable.
Well, that's certainly an interesting point of view. Judy Hubbard, thank you. Back to the studio.